2 viewers. One of them is me. How's it going, everybody that has just come in? Hopefully you guys aren't at work. I got 6. Let me see if it'll go up to 10. And then I'll get started. Hopefully everybody's having a great Thursday. Mama Llama. Well, I'm not doing much hunting right now, but the research is driving me crazy. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to sleep when you just recite the poem over and over in your head at nighttime. Adventurer, how's it going? I enjoyed your show the other night with Jason. It was a pretty good show. Hydro Makers, how's it going? Am I the only one that recites the poem over and over at nighttime when you're laying in bed? Like, it'd be nice to know that I'm not going crazy with that. Alright. Got 7 in here. I think realistically, well, got 6 in here because I'm one of the people viewing it. I think a good majority of people are at work, so you're not crazy. So you do it too? Like, that keeps me awake. Drives me nuts. Alright. Got 9. I think we all do. It's like, yeah, maybe when I'm in a tired state, I'll have one of those funny imaginations, you know? Alright. Alright, we can get started. We're at 9. That's what I think is going to happen. People will just watch it later. So the last question I had read was, is the chest actually directly visible when you look quickly down with marble gaze, or is it camouflaged in some interesting way? Fenn just replied, okay. It's obvious that he did not want to answer that because it'll probably give a clue in itself. Alright, the next question, on June 29th, 2014, since beginning on my journey with the thrill of the chase, I have found myself having a new appreciation for poetry. I have noticed in your book, The Thrill of the Chase, and heard in your interviews and book signings that you have quoted poets from Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodgson, to William E. Henley, from Omar Khayyam and T.S. Eliot to your friend Yvette Haley. Could you possibly provide a short list both of some of your favorite poets and your favorite poems? Have some poems been meaningful to you for a long time and others perhaps have been added to your list more recently? Thank you. Fenn says, thanks, I like your question. There was a much celebrated musician who owned a very valuable Stradivarius violin. Once he played in a Carnegie Hall to a packed crowd of black ties and bodice-laced dresses. The audience was rapt, enthralled, mesmerized. It was the greatest music they had ever heard. At the conclusion of the concert, a standing ovation lasted 15 minutes as the violinist accepted the accolades he so richly deserved. When everyone was finally seated again, the performer took the violin and smashed it over a chair, sending splinters careening into the second tier. A bourbon hush fell over the stunned crowd as the musician raised his bow and announced, "That was not my Stradivarius. It isn't the violin. It's the violinist." I forgot what the question was. Oh, now I remember. In contrast, for me, it's not so much the poet as it is the words. There are a few poems located somewhere in the back of my memory where I can pull them out on occasion, mostly for my own enjoyment. Much of the time I don't remember who wrote the words because I'm not cultured enough to care, if the truth were known. An exception is Invictus by Henley, as you observed. There is poetry for all occasions, and sometimes I startle, even myself, with words that I can remember. As we all know, words can both soothe and alarm your pulse, and that's what makes it so interesting. So that's a very long way for Fenn to just say, I care more about the words and the content than the person. Maybe he's hoping that the same thing will happen. There was an episode. Yeah, I think it was while Adventure was on with Fenn Treasure Hunter. You know how it almost appeared like Fenn was fed up with it or just getting annoyed, and maybe just like Adventure had pointed out, maybe he's seeing for the first time that people are in it just for the money and not for the literature, not for the poetry, not for the thrill of the chase, the couple $1 million that are at stake. So maybe there's a possibility that Fenn wanted his poem to be known and like highly praised, and not him, for his fame, his fortune, and everything else. And my dogs are barking. Never fails. All right. So question posted on 6/29/2014. Forrest, did you intend for there to be 9 clues, or did it work out just right with 9? Fenn says, nice thinking. I didn't count the clues until the poem had been finalized, although I changed it a few times over the months and think the number stayed about the same. Which I find that kind of strange, because I'm going to, hold on, I'm going to mark this so I can easily come back to it. And I'm going to find serendipity. Fenn said, or somebody asked, when creating the hunt, was there any serendipity involved? Did you just find that things just clicked together somehow? And Fenn replied, serendipity, an aptitude for making desirable discoveries by accident. The word carries several connotations, and I don't think it works for me in the context you mentioned. Playing a hunch is nearly always fraught with disappointment, especially if the stakes are high. A searcher who guesses through life is destined to carry a thin wallet. So he's saying, he's giving the definition of serendipity. This is Fenn. Serendipity, an aptitude for making desirable discoveries by accident, which he says does not apply to his poem. But yet in this question, let me go back to it. Pretty sure it was, I thought I marked it with a bunch of Y's, but I guess not. Hold on, just bear with me for a second. Right here. Forrest, did you intend for there to be 9 clues, or did it work out to be just right? So we have serendipity, pretty much discovering something by accident. And he said no, but right here he says, I didn't count the clues until the poem had been finalized. Although I changed it a few times over the months, I think the number stayed about the same. So he didn't know the clues, the number of clues, or count the number of clues until the poem was finished, but there was no serendipity involved. Maybe somebody can elaborate on that a little bit, but like I said in my last video, Fenn, he gives these contradicting statements, which kind of makes it extremely hard for us, and I think he does it intentionally, so we can't kind of pick him apart and really learn a little bit about his mentality and psychology and all that. This person says, on June 30th, 2014, hi Forrest, I would like to know if the blaze can be found during the day without a flashlight. Thanks. Fenn says, perhaps your question is wrought with trickiness. Are you really asking if the blaze could be found in a cave where it is dark during the day, thus the need of a flashlight? If there is no subterfuge intended in your question, then I would say yes. So, confirmation, Forrest's blaze can be found during the daytime without a flashlight. Which, if you're finding the blaze and then looking quickly down, supposedly the treasure's there, if that's how it's supposed to be interpreted. Well, we already know Fenn has admitted that it's not in a mine, it's not in a tunnel, and it's not in a cave. So I think the odds of a blaze being in a cave, tunnel, or mine is obviously, you can scratch that off your list. Continuing on. In the thrill of the, this was on June 30th, 2014. In the thrill of the chase, you mentioned the taste of a porcupine. What do you think tastes worse than a porcupine? Good question. One of the ways my father used to discipline me was to make me ingest a tablespoon of castor oil. That was that was a very effective deterrent and the punishment I hated the most. He saved it for when I did something really bad, like forge his signature on my report cards. The smell was terrible and I wasn't allowed to hold my nose while it was being dispensed. But you can't smell while you're holding your breath. So I could do that and no one knew. He's saying that wrong. You can't taste while like plugging your nose. Like if you plug your nose and you can't smell, then you can't taste. But he's saying the complete opposite. He's saying you can't smell while you're holding your breath. Well, yeah, that's obvious because otherwise you'd be breathing in and breathing out. But he's not talking about the smell really. He's talking about the taste. I find that weird. That might be a question to look at a little bit more. And then he followed it. Once I hid the dreaded bottle of castor oil behind a bunch of stuff on the top shelf in the pantry. And although I got a spanking for doing it, it was a morale victory for me. Alright. Let me just say, I don't think that all of these have something, like, something important into them. I know I've been kind of giving an explanation for all of them, but that's just because I find it, some of the stuff that he says is just, so weird and kind of out of the ordinary that I think, if you can kind of pick apart his words, even when the words don't matter, you'll have a better understanding of, the way that he thinks or, the words that he uses and, the type of context that he uses to apply his words, even when they don't make sense. Mr. Fenn, this was on June 30th as well. Mr. Fenn, of all the things you have done in your life, what is it that you regret the most? Fenn never answered this question. He didn't even reply, like, no comment. He just didn't answer it. Maybe some of you guys can find an answer out there for it, but on Mysterious Writings, there's no answer for it. Alright, question posted on June 30th as well. Mr. Fenn, when you said it's not associated with any structure, did it mean all 9 clues or just where the chest is? Fenn says, yes, it means the treasure is not hidden in or about a structure. Google structure for more information. Alright, let's give that a shot. Structure. Structure. The arrangement of and relations between the parts or elements of something complex. Well, words are complex, literature is complex. Is he referring it to it that way? All right. A building or other object constructed from several parts. All right. And then another definition, the quality of being organized. I could see that applying. All right, and then as a verb, structures, structured, structuring. Construct or arrange according to plan, give a pattern or organization to. Please stop. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I feel like Fenn would use it more in that way. The arrangement of and relations between the parts or elements of something complex, or to construct or arrange according to a plan, give a pattern or organization to. I mean that and the quality of being organized. Like you have no structure in your life, or the treasure is not associated with any sort of structure. So if it's not associated with structure, we have the treasure chest is not hidden or associated with any sort of relationship between parts, elements, anything complex, or organization. Uh, Meaning, like, I read that and I feel like there's nothing in particular that made him, there's no part, element, or complex reason as to why he put the treasure where he did, other than he thought it was a special place. Um, yeah, that's totally a stab in the dark, but he said Google the definition of structure. That's what I did, and that's what I just read. Um, I'm going to read that one more time. Mr. Fenn, when you said not associated with any structure, did that mean all 9 clues or just where the chest sits? Yes, it means the treasure is not hidden in or about a structure. Google structure for more information. And then he just left it at that. Could be far-reaching on my part. I don't know. All right. Question on July 1st, 2014. Dear Forrest, you tell us that we should find where warm waters halt before trying to solve any of the other clues. Imagining that we haven't seen the rest of the poem and all we have to go on is A, begin at where warm waters halt, and B, somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe, do you think that we can confidently determine the starting place for your treasure trail? Fenn says, no. If all you have to go on are those 2 clues, you cannot proceed with confidence. Look at it this way. If you were making a cake and you left out a few ingredients, would you achieve your goal? Your question reminds me of another. You leave home and walk a straight line for a mile. Turn 90 degrees left and walk a curved line for a mile and shoot a bear. Then you turn 90 degrees left again and walk a straight line back to your home. What color is the bear? That is so freaking weird. I wonder if there's an answer to that. Like if it's a riddle all in itself. That's what I think the poem is. I don't think the poem is a treasure map poem. I feel like it's a riddle. And he just throws riddles at us. And within the riddles that he throws at us are, somewhere hidden in the context is a way to interpret his poem. But he just says, if all you have to go on are those 2 clues being where warm waters halt and somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe, you cannot proceed with confidence. Look at it this way. If you were making a cake and you left out a few ingredients, would you achieve your goal? He's saying, in order to solve the poem or riddle or whatever it is that you want to interpret it as, you have to figure out where warm waters halt. And that's totally understandable. That's totally understandable if, regardless of it, if it's directions, right? Obviously, if I'm giving somebody directions to my house, right, they would have to know where they're coming from or where the directions are starting in order to get to me. But think of it this way. If it's a riddle, right, maybe the answers within the riddle cannot be solved unless you figure out where warm waters halt. Alright, I'm going to stop. I'm seeing some comments. I'm going to read them real quick. Okay. He said you can see it if you get close enough. What do you think about Why Must I Go? Diagramming Forrest's poem, stanza 2. I'm trying to word it in a way that I feel would be like best suited. I think he's more or less picking apart the punctuation and the grammar and the sentence structure and all that, as opposed to the context of the words. When Fenn says that you need a good map, there are literary maps. Remember like in school when you were going to write an essay and you would do brainstorming, right? And you would put your idea in the middle. Well, let's say, the idea of where warm waters halt is right here in the middle. And then you have all these branches going off, right? Well, that's a form of mapping or like a literary mapping, if that makes sense. So, there are multiple different forms of maps and blueprints and everything else. So I think he's taking a good approach by doing it, I don't necessarily know if breaking apart the sentence structure and punctuation is the right way to go about it. I think there are certain things to take into consideration, like the word and, right? And or with, those are in addition to. So when you have begin at where warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down, I don't think where begin at where warm waters halt is the first clue. I think it's half of it. I think in order to figure out where it is, you also have to, in addition to, take it in the canyon down, if that makes sense. So in my opinion, the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down. That's where the comma is. That's the first clue. Fenn says he decides where the reader pauses, not the reader. There's a reason why he broke up those lines, why he put the punctuation where he did, why he used certain clauses or conjunctions or so on and so forth. So I think he's taken a good approach to it. Why must I go? Fenn's I take Forrest by his word when he says you don't need special knowledge, decoding yada yada. Don't remember the exact wording. Yeah, I think so too. I think everything in the poem is exactly the way that Fenn wanted it to be. There is a form of, it's not really subterfuge on his part or misleading, but he designed it intentionally knowing that we would mislead ourselves. He wrote the poem to say exactly what he wanted it to say and mean. However, he knew that we were going to jack it up when we were reading it, because we're reading a surface reading. We're not reading the intended meaning. Like, for example, begin it where warm waters halt. If you can figure out the context, by reading begin where warm waters halt and take in the canyon down, if you can take that and figure out what context it is, I think if you can solve it, or if you know what it is, everything will fall into place as far as that clue, right? Remember in school when we would learn about context clues, and we would learn about figuring out an unknown word by the form or by reading the context around it. In my opinion, in this first clue, the unknown word is it. I don't know how many of you guys have been sitting around and you're like, what the hell is it? Like, what is it? That doesn't even make any sense. Begin it. There are tons of stuff that it can be, but I'll save that for the episode A Word is Key before I go on too long. Fenn seems to have found a lot of treasures, artifacts on his walkabouts. Was that serendipity or research on his part? I think Fenn somehow is awesome at research. I use research to go metal detecting, but he takes it on a whole new level. He's finding archaeologic discoveries, with who knows what. Are they ancient texts? Are they, legends? Are they? How does he find stuff? Is he walking around? He finds an arrowhead. That might have been serendipity, but he uses his knowledge and resources of knowing, how Native American camps and villages and whatnot were set up. So once he finds that arrowhead, now he knows to focus on that specific area, and then he proceeds. If he finds something else, and then so on and so forth, he's going to dedicate more time to that place. However, if all he found was the arrowhead and it's not producing anymore, then obviously he'll probably try to move on to a different site. But his ability to buy that piece of land that had the kivas of San Lazaro and be able to excavate it to the point where the Bureau of Land Management was pissed off at him because they didn't realize it before giving out the land or whatever. And I don't know. I could be misinterpreting all of the whole BLM and Lost Kivas and whatnot, but I just don't think so. The BLM was pissed off for a reason. Archaeologists were mad for a reason, because it had been sitting there underneath their freaking nose the whole time. Pretty interesting nonetheless. It's simple, folks. Fenn says what he means and means what he says. The poem is straightforward, with no subterfuge in sight. Rodney and Room. In case you guys didn't see, and it's something you care about, Mysterious Writings posted a new Fenn quote today. When asked about his gut feeling was, when asked how his gut feeling was going, he commented, "My gut feeling is wavering." That's so weird because I'm gonna pull this up real quick. I know I'm getting kind of off track of my reading my questions, but I wrote Fenn an email the other day, and lately he hasn't responded to any of my emails. I said, "Forrest, I have to ask, and I hope that the answer to this question does not contain a clue, in hopes that you will be more inclined to answer it. If not, I hope it at least makes you debate a little bit harder about deciding whether or not to answer. You have always previously stated that you think the finder will most likely be the type that can't keep their mouth shut about it, but in this most recent interview you claim the opposite. All of us in the search community are dying to know, why the sudden change of thought? Why do you believe the finder will keep it a secret? Also, if the finder does keep it a secret, would we have any way of knowing that indulgence has been recovered? I do hope you greatly consider answering this. Have a nice night. Very respectfully, Rodney Greenway." No reply. Soul crushing. But yeah, that new comment, it just blows my mind. You know, why did he say for so long that, you know, the person's going to announce, and now he's, you know, backing down on that? My gut feeling is wavering. Does that mean, you know, he's having, you know, sometimes he thinks this, sometimes he thinks not, so on and so forth. Crazy. I just said the after party that Fenn's gut feeling was his hopes it would be found. Rodney, have you been invited to speak with FS or Flipside or Fenn Treasure Hunter? We made a brief mention about it the other day. We're both kind of busy people. I kind of just said it sarcastically, you know, like, hey, you know, when am I going to get an invite? But he responded and is willing to work something out. I have never talked to the Flip Side. I'd be honored to be on anybody's show, but I understand that people got their own stuff going on. Anyways, it is the map. Begin map. That's another thing. So if we're going to apply it, are we putting anything in front of it? Like, in this case, it is the map. So are we saying begin the map where warm waters halt? Or is it something like begin navigating, begin starting point, you know, stuff like that? Are we to insert something prior to whatever we believe it is? Or whatever it is, should it flow smoothly with begin it where warm waters halt? So begin blank where warm waters halt. You know, no combination of words and so on and so forth. In one of your videos, you said the poem doesn't really give any directions. Who was that? In mine? Hey, IG. How's it going, Illinois Ghost? Good to have you in here. Adventure, really? Wow, didn't see that. Very interesting. Why did you remove your video? Who, me? Am I still live right now? What are you saying yes to, Illinois Ghost? And what video are you referring to? Why did you remove your video? Are you talking to me? Or... So I'll certainly put in a word for you. Oh, I appreciate it, Mama Llama. Which video are you talking about? I didn't remove any of my videos. I'll wait for those comments. I'm going to continue on. I'm curious as to see what video you're talking about, though, Hydro Makers, because I haven't taken... Stop. It is storming here, and I have the biggest baby of a dog. There's my wife and 2 kids out in the living room, and somehow my dog only wants me. Alright, continuing on. Alright, on July 1st, Mr. Fenn, in the past when you have said that several people had figured out the first 2 clues, then went right past the other clues, would you say that they got lucky and just happened to go to the correct starting area, not fully understanding the poem? Or would you say that they did indeed solve the first two clues by understanding the poem and the clues? Fenn says, searchers have routinely revealed where they think the treasure chest was hidden and had walked me through the process that took them on that course. That's how I know few have identified the first two clues. Although others were at the starting point, I think their arrival was an aberration and they were oblivious to its connection with the poem. Playing a hunch is not worth it. Much in the search and or Playing a hunch is not worth much in the search, and those who start out by looking for the blaze are wasting their time. I find this a bit contradictory because Fenn right here is saying searchers have routinely revealed where they think the treasure was hidden and walked me through the process that took them on that course. But Fenn also has said numerous times that he doesn't know the exact location. People just email him a general location. Right here in 2014, he said the complete opposite. He said people have walked me through the process. So if they walked Fenn through the process about how they got there and where they went, then how is Fenn saying like, oh, they only email me general locations of where they went? And then this part, although others were at the starting point, I think their arrival was an aberration and they were oblivious to its connection with the poem. So does that mean that the blaze is something that is easily mistaken, or the blaze is something that we wouldn't consider a blaze, right? That's the only way that a searcher wouldn't be able to see the connection with the poem, right? Just walked past something like, oh hey, that's cool, and then they just keep going looking for their blaze. Or is he saying other people? Just random people happen to be within very close proximity and they didn't even know about the poem. So something to ponder on. All right, on July 1st as well, in your dictionary, what's an aberration? Or aberration, I should say. I don't have a dictionary, but my personal definition is something different. I like that word. When I was a kid, there was a commonly used word, crean or crean, and it described the condition a car could get into when it ran into a ditch and the frame twisted a little, preventing the doors from opening. Modern autos are more sturdy, so I guess that word was retired. I can't find it anywhere now. So the word just up and disappeared, or yeah, I've used that word too, but I think it was like careened, like he careened his car. I don't know, but he talks about the ravine walls had gotten so high and so thin that only the water could get through it, like meaning that like nothing could fit in it besides the water, right? And if you wedge your car in between something like that, you won't be able to open the doors up. He gives a lot of references to these small places. All right. Do you think that, this was on July 2nd, do you think that someone who is sure about the location of the home of Brown could reverse engineer where warm waters halt? Fenn says, thanks for the question. If you are sure about the location of home of Brown, why are you concerned about where warm waters halt? But to answer your question, sure you could, and a few searchers might throw in some gas money for a percentage of the take. What? Why would you have to throw in gas money? Is he implying that the home of Brown is a significant distance away from... Oh my gosh. That's not far, but too far to walk. But to consider your question, sure you could, and a few searchers might throw in some gas money for a percentage. So if you were to start at the home of Brown and reverse engineer and head back to where warm waters halt, other searchers might want to pitch in gas money. What, if it's if not far but too far to walk is a hike or a boat, like a rafting trip or something, why would you have to throw in gas money? He's saying not far but too far to walk. Not far being close or short or near, right? And too far to walk being a drive. So we have not far, short, too far to walk, drive. Short drive, right? Just something like that. That's the only reasonable explanation why I can think why he would say throw in some gas money for a percentage of the take. That's pretty interesting. All right. On July 3rd, 2014, Dear Forrest, is it true your sister June married your friend Donnie? Were you resentful of June taking the spotlight from you by being the youngest and only girl and then marrying your best friend? Fenn says, what spotlight is that about which you speak? My sister did marry Donnie, and it was almost as big of a surprise to me as it was when I learned that they were divorcing. I was on the periphery of all that by then because I was trying to survive being a private in the Air Force. Being a private's tough. I was never close to my sister in later years. Part of it was geography, but we were philosophically opposite. She was a sugar and honey liberal, and I'm trying to recover salt and pepper conservative. I supported June for a few years, and looking back on it now, I realized that I could have been a better brother. When she died, I became the last living member of my family. I don't really have much to say for that, besides Fenn doesn't consider himself somebody in the spotlight. Or has he ever considered? And he mentions that in his book. He says, Skippy was Dad's favorite, so if he got a licking, I knew that I was going to. And he always said, I was in the middle, so I looked up to Skippy, but June was the youngest, but I couldn't look down to her because, his dad would have an issue with that. Fenn almost talks in a way that he was like almost the neglected child, I guess. That's just kind of how I feel when I read it, and I've discovered some pretty significant stuff in the book, and none of which that I would want to talk about on here because if Fenn does watch these, I wouldn't want, if I am wrong, I wouldn't want him to feel bad about the stuff that I'm saying. Alright, before I read the next question, there's my dog again. Alright, no, that was for IG. He had a video on Fenn's wavering. Oh, okay. Probably my video. Had to stream, was having trouble. Something valuable that is undiscovered. What is something valuable that is undiscovered? You're saying the definition of wavering? Did he know where the person asking the reverse engineering question lives? Meaning, how far do they need to travel to get to the treasure hunt area? It doesn't say. It's the questions are posted through Mysterious Writings, little featured 6 questions or whatever, and then using those questions, they pick and pull, which questions they want to have asked. In this case, this year it seems like instead of just doing the 6 questions, they allowed a lot more and kind of left it up for Fenn to answer. But there is no indication that he knew. Do you think that someone who is sure about the location of home of Brown could reverse engineer it where warm waters halt? Then all it has is his first and last name. I don't think Fenn would be able to get a location for that. I mean, he could, but all right. Continuing on. Hi, Forrest. You said it was a man who came physically closest to the treasure, but who has come mentally closest? Like, who seems most likely to interpret the clues correctly, man or woman? Fenn says, she's playing the gender card, folks, but I'm wise to it. Perhaps all searchers think they have been mentally close to the treasure, but that doesn't matter much. When you get to the bank. A man has been within striking distance, but so have women. That That's probably not a good subject to discuss considering the volcanic effect it could have in certain blog areas. I wish someone would ask me that I wish someone would ask me a question that I would feel comfortable answering, like what color is a daffodil? Uh, I read this. I've read this one over and over, and I'm like, that's a weird comment to make because nobody would ever ask that question, right? It's an obvious question. It's such an obvious question that it almost seems like he's giving us an obvious answer when he throws it in there randomly. Um, like he wants us to see that question and think about the color. Right here, he says a man has been within striking distance. Well, a striking distance, I think of anything like a hand touch away, right? But Fenn said that a searcher has been within 200 feet and walked right past it. So how can somebody be 200 feet away but then within striking distance? Unless he's saying a man, just a random person, because he says a man has been within striking distance, but so have women, right? He's just saying people in general. Now, is that before? Is he saying a man and woman have been within striking distance of where the treasure sits, but before it was there? Or is he talking about since it's been there? On July 4th, 2014, Forrest, what's the minimum number of clues that we need to solve to find the treasure, assuming that we follow each clue in order? I've thought extremely hard about this one. Fenn says just one, the last one. Is he referring to... Somebody said that it's Fenn using wordplay, and that obviously retrieving the treasure is the one that he's saying that's the only one you would need. But retrieving the treasure isn't really it's not a clue. He says, take the chest and go in peace. So is it the look quickly down, following Blaze? Is it marble gaze, Terry Scant with marble gaze, meaning wait around a little bit and stare intently and pay attention? I have a feeling that once you find the Blaze, you need to Terry Scant with marble gaze and hear me all and listen good. So he's saying to wait, to look, and to listen. And that's how you're going to find the treasure. All right, which would make sense because that would also be how somebody's not just going to stumble upon it. Meaning like it's not out in the obvious open. So maybe there's something that you have to hear or listen for. Did you know the person? Were you having trouble streaming? Definition of aberration. Too far to walk to home of Brown. Warm water salt that requires gas money. Would that be a gallon or two or a full tank? That's a good question, At Mary. To me, it means home of Brown is a dead end, and in order to get to the home of Brown, then to Warm Water's Halt and back to home of Brown again, you would need to gas up. Okay, I get what you're saying with that. Okay. On July 4th, 2014, you told a reporter that there are 3 or 4 clues in the second stanza. Were you telling the truth? Fenn says, I don't know what it is about girls, but when I say something, they automatically ask if I'm lying. Shame on you. I promise you that I get more things right than most reporters. If you were here, I would make you take a dose of castor oil. Besides, if I lied to the reporter, what makes you think I would tell you the truth? Sorry, I'm off my soapbox now. No, I was not lying, but I don't remember a reporter asking me such a question. So Fenn is saying, I don't remember a reporter asking me that, and I don't remember saying it, but yes, I said it. And I swear I've heard Fenn, they were reading the second stanza, or Fenn was pointing to it or something, and he says that looks about like 4 or 5 clues right there. And the second stanza is, has anybody noticed that that on the online PDF version, you have, as I have gone alone in there, begin it where warm waters halt, and from there it's no place for the meek, then is ever drawing nigh, there will be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. And then all the rest of the poem is gone. So is it supposed to be interpreted that the only parts of the poem that contain clues and the only parts of the poem that we would need to solve and find the treasure are just those three stanzas that are posted on Fenn's own published PDF version of like the little the sample? All right. Continuing on. July 5th, 2014. Mr. Fenn, did you choose the hiding location purely because it was special to you, or were there other considerations? I'm not talking about logistics like transporting yourself there, ease of access, not being spotted. Fenn says, thanks. The spot where I hid the treasure was in my mind from the time I first started thinking about the chase. It is special to me, and there was never another consideration. I was going to make it work no matter what. In my reverie, I often find myself stealing away to that place, and I will always consider it to be mine alone. Is that a comment towards his "as I have gone alone" in there? Is he saying that this is his own place, or is "as I have gone alone" in there? I mean, that's the way it should be taken. That's how I've always taken it. Is totally joining Space Force to search the moon. I would love to join Space Force. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that rant right there. All right, Forrest, you talk about the clues being difficult to solve, opposite being easy. Yet that the solutions are simple, opposite of being complex. Yet when I read the stories of other searchers, I often think that their solutions to the clues tend to be either easy solutions or made out to be very complex and overthought. Are there any suggestions that you would give in approaching the clues and solving them? Fenn says, Craig, there is no substitute for thinking and planning and observing and looking at maps unless it's the desire to keep it simple. Craig, there is no substitute for thinking and planning and observing and looking at maps unless it's the desire to keep it simple. Is he giving us on one hand, you know, there's no reason to not think, plan, observe, and look at maps unless the desire is to keep it simple, right? You have two options. Well, Fenn has always said, keep it simple. Don't oversimplify, but keep it simple. So, does that mean, you know, don't think, plan, observe, and look at maps like to an extraordinary extent? You know, like maybe just let loose of all your senses. He says sometimes principle trumps logic, you know, stuff like that. So maybe you're just supposed to read it and, you know, kind of wing it and see how it goes. And maybe that's why he makes reference to, you know, a child possibly having a better chance of solving it. You know, they don't have the life experiences and everything else that would get in our way of being able to, you know, for us to solve it. All right, on July 7th, 2014, is the chest hidden in the exact same spot that you would like your bones to be found, or is it a short distance away for reasons beyond your control? Fenn says, the spot is the same, but in less than 2 months I'll be 84, and that means many of the things to which I once aspired are no longer available to me. I still anticipate, but I may be unable to grasp such a transient pleasure before my trail shows signs of growing too weary for the journey. To make that success would be the boldest move I ever made, and to that end, I just want it all the more. So we know not to go somewhere that a 79-year-old or 80-year-old man couldn't go, right? And that it's not dangerous in the normal sense. But now, at 84, he wouldn't be able to get into that spot. He's saying to attempt it would be the boldest move he ever made. And to that end, I want it all the more. So it's like, it's something out of reach, he yearns for it, but now that he's 84, well, now that he's 87, he can't get to it. So it's not dangerous. Somewhere a 79-year-old or 80-year-old man could go, but nowhere that an 84-year-old man could go. So semi-difficult, maybe. Okay. Next question on July 8th, 2014. Dear Forrest, facing death in the ways you experienced must have had an impact on how you lived your life. I realize you share some of this in your books, but do you feel you would have any thought to hide the treasure if these life-threatening events hadn't happened? Fenn says, well, I just don't know. Maybe my year in combat made me more tolerant, more forgiving perhaps. Sometimes when I'm in a conversation now and things are said that I know are incorrect, rather than confront, it has become my nature to just smile and enjoy the small victory that comes with being quietly smug. Hiding the treasure was something else. A few weeks after they told me I was critically ill, I wanted to strike out the tradition that proclaims when a man dies, all of his spiritual being halts. Spiritual being halts. At my secret hiding place, as I was closing the chest for the last time, I felt part of me slip inside and become part of the treasure. Or at least I thought it did. I'm okay with that now. This proclaims when a man dies, all of his spiritual being halts. Is he just using that word to use it, or is he using halts to give reference to the first clue? Might be something to go back and look through. All right, so everywhere from the first video I made, the majority, so like 3/4 of the first video I made, all of the second video I've made, and now we just finished up all the questions from 2014. As we get into 2015, 16, 17, and 18, there are only 6 questions. So I'm curious as to why, Fenn had participated a lot more in 2014 and why he has decided not to, anymore. What was it because of, more publicity, more people joining the search, so on and so forth. You would think that, maybe the first year answering questions, he would answer as many as he possibly could, and then kind of back down. But to do it, halfway between when he hid the chest and now, he does this huge outpour of questions. I really wish that there would have been more years just like 2014 where he communicated a lot more. Even, emails. I'm sure he's sick of answering emails, but shit, I hate when my email does not get answered. That's selfish of me, whatever, but at least in my emails, I'm not telling him solves or asking for clues. Sometimes I just curiously want to know something that I feel like he would probably know, and don't get a response. Alright, I'm going to read the chat, and then I'll probably wrap it up. The next video will be the hopefully the 6 questions from 2015 and 16, leaving just one more for year 17 and 18. Alright. Alright. 3 stanzas, 3 clues each. Mama Llama, that can't be the case because he already said that second stanza. He said that the second stanza contains, he said 4 or 5 clues. He says, looks like 4 or 5 clues to me. I'll try to find the exact spot that I found it. And then supposedly the first clue is begin at where warm waters halt. So does that mean that everything from as I have gone alone in there down to where warm waters halt does not contain a clue? Um, so meaning, if I am right with this, and just the 3 stanzas contain the 9 clues, then you have either 4 or 5 in the second stanza, and then 4 or 5 in the last one, and that's really all that you would need to solve it. Fenn says that you can solve the first, I think he said you can solve the first 5 clues on the internet. I'd have to look that up as well. 3 or 4, 4 or 5. I'm not really sure. He just definitely confirmed with that woman that was asking the question that he's agreeing to the first stanza having 4 clues. So at a minimum, it has that, or the second stanza. Sorry. To me means something brown. All right. Totally not Mitzi. Hold on. How's the hunt? Why? Because planet Earth doesn't have 20-mile high mountains. I don't know what that was going to. Yesterday went great, resting. Oh, you went out boots on the ground? That's cool. I really like the area, but need to get a Garmin tomorrow. I have this. I have a pretty good app on my phone. It's called US Topo, and you can pay. I think it's like $4.99 for the Pro Edition. But as long as like the map's uploaded before you lost service, it'll still continue to trace and track and get you to where you got to go. The maps might start not being able to load, but apparently you can save them for offline use. I just want to rule out the moon. I like to be efficient. Save the moon time. He gave title away. I climbed one close to that high yesterday. Came on myself. So pretty. Alright. Seems like there's not a whole lot of comments or questions towards me. While flying over one of the entrances to Yellowstone, we came across a small waterfall, appeared to be spring-fed. If you begin where warm waters halt, you could end up where cool waters start. Now, I've thought the same thing. Really there's only one way that warm can stop being warm. It either becomes hot or it becomes cold. People will jump to a conclusion of like, ice or whatever, but you just completely bypassed cold and went straight to freezing. When talking about evaporation and whatnot, well, you have your boiling point and your melting point and all that, your freezing point. So to get to all those, we're completely bypassing hot and cold. I've thought about the same thing where you're talking about. Even cool, yeah, even better, right? So warm, cool, cold, and then freezing. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I am approaching 1 hour right now. I appreciate all of you guys, all of you attending. And then one more shout out to Jenny over at Mysterious Writings for allowing me to use, all of her compiled questions. I really appreciate it. I hope that you guys are enjoying these videos, even though I know I go on rants sometimes, but it is what it is. I love the emails that I've been getting, and if anybody does want to email me, I'll always wrap it up later. If anybody does want to email me, my email will be in the description box as soon as I edit it. But just so you know, it is fentreasurethoughts@gmail.com. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications. Let your friends know. Anybody else that you know that's searching, please guide them over to my video. And other than that, have a great night. Thanks for coming.